Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to make a monochromatic landscape with atmospheric perspective. A lot of big words. Monochromatic means shades of one color. An atmospheric perspective talks about how, as you move into the distance, things appear to fade or get lighter. So to start this landscape, I'm going to draw a series of bumpy, wavy lines across my surface. I'm keeping them uneven because most landscapes are not perfectly straight or level or matchy-matchy. You want them all to look different, like different hill lines or treetops. I'm kind of numbering them on the side to show the different values, the light and dark colors of the blue that I'm going to use. And now I am going to start with my lightest value first, so that's the furthest away in the distance. So I'm taking a drop of blue, mixing it into my white, and I want this to look like a really, really pale blue. So my first batch came out too dark, so I added in a bit of my light blue into more white to make it the lightest possible blue I could get. So that's my furthest point away in the distance, and I'm going to fill in that section as smoothly as I can with paint. I am going to do 2 coats with every section to make sure my paint is on smooth and not streaky, just because most paint needs 2 coats for good coverage. My second value, as you can see when I put it down, it should be noticeably darker than the first one. I don't want it to jump to dark or even medium blue quite yet, but I want to make sure I can see the difference between the two. So that's how you make sure when you control your values that you're comparing to make sure each one gets noticeably darker as you move down. When you paint, you'll find that you'll probably need at least 2 different brushes, one thick and one thin, one big, one small, because you're going to have skinny areas and wider areas to paint in. So you can see now I'm mixing up my third value. I'm going to test it out before I paint everywhere to make sure I can tell if it's dark enough. I think I mixed in a little more blue there. That looks dark enough. So now I'm using my wider brush because I have a big section, smoothly painting along the lines. Try not to be choppy and jumpy with your brush when you're going along one of your lines. You should drag your hand in a very smooth way to get a smooth line. And then switch to a small brush when you're trying to get into those little corners or those tiny little sections. And of course you want to do that twice. So here I am going through the second time, and you can see how much smoother the paint is on the right than the left because it now has 2 coats. So you can paint a little faster in those open areas, but go real slow and with a small brush on the lines or in the small areas. It makes a big difference to take your time. So now I'm mixing up value number 4. So I'm taking a small little scoop of blue, 1 small scoop at a time, and mixing it into my last color. Test it to make sure you can see if it's dark enough. If it's not, add in a scoop or 2 more of your color, lay it on there, and do this as many times as you need to, slow and steady. So mix in 1 or 2 little scoops of your color at a time until you create the next value that is darker than the last, but not too dark that you're not saving room to get darker in your next ones. So here I am. Probably could have switched to a small brush in that section, but as long as you're going slow and you have control. Second coat. You can move faster and do quicker strokes in those open areas, but slower and smoother, longer strokes along lines or in small areas so you can keep control. Now I'm mixing up value number 5. Testing it. If I can't see a noticeable difference, that means I got to add in more. So you can see I'm mixing up a little third section because once you get further along, you do need more of your color and less of your white. So I kind of moved that into a new spot on my palette. That's what I start painting. And you will notice that as you get to the darker values, you might need to go into 3 coats possibly to get smooth coverage, because the contrast, the difference between your dark values of paint and your white board are so much bigger that you're going to see your streaks more because that white's going to want to show through against those dark colors. So 2, possibly 3 coats when you get to the darker values at the bottom. Your last value can be your pure color. So for me, it could be pure blue, but I did add a touch of white in because it does help to get better paint coverage. And because of that white showing through, you can see it's very hard to tell the difference between that last value and the one before it. But once I add my second coat in, you can now see it's darkening it up so much more on that left-hand side where I did my second coat. So smooth, at least 2 coats on everything, slow and steady to get even coverage. And there you go. So this takes time, but I hope you enjoy it. It's a nice, simple, fun paint mixing project.